Adventure Island for Game Boy versus Revenge of Drancon, Wonder Boy for Game Gear. To be honest, this was never going to be a fair comparison. So this isn't really a competitive comparison. It's just a appreciation of the fact these two games both exist. It's not a fair comparison in terms of just the release dates of these games and really what they're based off of. Wonder Boy is a game that came out in the arcades in 1986. That was ported to the Master System in 1987. And obviously that's what this game on the Game Gear is based off of. Even though it came out in 1990, that was for the handheld and really just a port of the Master System game from 1987. On the flip side, Adventure Island for Game Boy is actually based on Adventure Island 2 from the NES, and that's a game that came out in 1991. So we're comparing a game from 1987 to a game from 1991. I believe this came out on the Game Boy in 1992. So basically the next year they had the portable version. So on the handhelds we're comparing a game that came out in 1990 or 1991 to a game that came out in 1992. But realistically we're comparing a game that came out in 1987 to a game that came out in 1991. So again, this isn't a competitive comparison. I'm actually pleasantly surprised both of these exist for unique reasons on both. I wouldn't have expected that Adventure Island for the Game Boy was actually Adventure Island 2, so that was kind of a pleasant surprise. And I certainly wouldn't have expected that this Revenge of Drancon was Wonder Boy. So that was a pleasant surprise. Just finding this game on the Game Gear and realizing what it was a pleasant surprise. Wonder Boy for Game Gear was released in 1991, but it's really just a port of the Master System version from 1987, like I said. But the weird thing is when they brought this over to North America, they called it Revenge of Drancon or some weird thing like that. This really threw me off. When I saw this in a store, I almost passed it by. I thought, what a weird name for a game. The cover art kind of sucked. Really doesn't look like Wonder Boy at all. Why would you think this was Wonder Boy? Luckily I had my phone on me and I looked it up and realized it was Wonder Boy. And, they only wanted $10 for it, which is pretty good. I've actually seen I've actually seen the Japanese version, Wonder Boy, for the Game Gear. But, that was $30, so you can get the North American version for a third the price. It just has a really weird name. Graphics are good, sound is good, it's Wonder Boy. It literally looks just like Wonder Boy. It's really colorful, big sprites. So yeah, it is a good-looking game on the Game Gear. Plays fine, sounds fine, looks fine. It's Wonder Boy. It really is just a port of the Master System version, or you could say a port of the arcade version. But again, that's a game that came out in 1986. So by 1991. It's a little old, and it's not going to compare to Adventure Island 2. Adventure Island 2 on the Game Boy. Well, actually, it's Adventure Island. It's Adventure Island on the Game Boy, which is based on Adventure Island 2 from the NES. There is an Adventure Island 2 on the Game Gear. I don't know if that's Adventure Island 3 on the NES or if that's a whole different thing. But there is an Adventure Island 2 on the Game Boy. This is Adventure Island on the Game Boy, which is a port of Adventure Island 2 from the NES, which again I think came out in 1991, and then this came out on the Game Boy in 1992. This one they had to change a little bit because it's obviously black and white, but it's pretty close to the NES version. You got all the same little monsters you can ride. And That was really the cool thing they made in Adventure Island 2, which is also weird just in itself that, you know, Adventure Island 2 is very different than Adventure Island, which was kind of like Wonder Boy, but Wonder Boy itself kind of split off. Like Wonder Boy 2 and 3 are completely different. Wonder Boy 2 on Master System, you know, they added the kind of action RPG elements to it, and that kind of spun off into Wonder Boy, you know, on the Master or on the Mega Drive or Genesis. You know, completely different games really than Wonder Boy 1. Wonder Boy 1 is kind of spun off into Adventure Island. So that was always weird in itself. You've got sort of, you know, similar games with two different names. And now on the Game Gear, they went and called it something completely different again. It's almost a third name for the same game. Again, Revenge of Drancon. Who would even think this was Wonder Boy? I had no idea. But again, I'm glad I looked it up. The Game Boy game plays pretty good. I think on a real Game Boy, it played even better. This is one that it doesn't quite feel right in emulation. It doesn't quite sound right. It's close. So just keep that in mind. You're seeing emulation, and it might not sound 100%, and it might not run quite 100% as good as it does on a real Game Boy. At least it felt like that to me. But yeah, sometimes just on a smaller screen when I'm holding the Game Boy, it just feels different. I don't know. Anyways, the Game Boy game looks great. Sounds great. Great music. They fit a lot more in there. Obviously, it's almost a half generation step, you know, comparing Wonder Boy to Adventure Island 2, a game from 1986 to a game from 1991. You know, with memory has gotten cheaper and ROM sizes were getting bigger. It's like comparing an early Famicom game to a late Famicom game, right? So, I mean, there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more level variety. You've got the different monsters that give you different abilities. It's a much bigger game. It's a much more complex game. So again, this was never going to be a fair comparison. Again, we're comparing a game from 1986 to a game from 1991. So, yeah, again, never going to be a fair comparison. But I do like the fact both of these exist on the handhelds. They're both great ports to the handheld systems. And again, I'm glad I picked up Revenge of Drancon. I'm glad I didn't pass that one by because I almost did. So yeah, sometimes it doesn't hurt to have your phone on you when you're out and about and you're looking at video games, because you can go to, you know, eBay and Amazon and price charting and, you know, make sure you're paying a fair price for a game, and make sure you don't miss little hidden gems like this one. So anyways, that's Wonder Boy / Revenge of Drancon for the Game Gear versus Adventure Island for the Game Boy. According to the title screens here, actually, they might have both came out in 1991. But the point is, one is a game from 1991 versus a game from 1987. They're not really comparable to, you know, do a direct competition, you know, head-to-head competition. One was a classic game already for its time, but a classic game that you could now play on the handheld. They're both good ports for the handhelds, and they're both worth picking up, in my opinion. So there you go.